save your eyes. Okay, so I thought it could be fun to share with you guys a little bit of how I edit through a gallery. We'll do a little bit of a process here. Oh, recording my screen. Be kind of a shame if we got to the end and I hadn't recorded any of that. Sorry, I just want to make sure I pressed record. Yeah, we're good. I put lip gloss on for this video and I want to make sure it's... Yeah, it's a good thing I checked that. Okay, so the first thing that I do when I start editing a gallery is I'll make a base edit. And I'll typically take the first photo here. Edit, here's the before, here's the after. I was going for my standard kind of warm, relatively true to life colors, but still with a little bit of added color grading and depth. So I went in and I made sure all of my settings were right on that and I was happy with that edit. And then I basically progressed throughout, copy paste or sync those edits across a scene just being a relatively similar group of photos in this session. And then I'll essentially go through, I'll typically do some photos black and white in each gallery, and I really just choose that based on the photo. So you get to the point where you're going through a gallery and your eye just kind of immediately goes, yeah, that would look good black and white. And sometimes I'll do a black and white and a color version if I really can't decide. Photographers will understand that struggle. But basically I'll just go through here, and the edit usually develops somewhat and refines as I go throughout the gallery, and then sometimes I'll go back to the beginning of the gallery and I'll adjust as needed just to make sure everything looks cohesive and I'm happy with the final edits. I usually end up wanting to adjust slight bits of the gallery as I go through. Let's see, I should probably put these on. This is a little bit warmer than I would have liked when I originally edited. There we go, that's a little better. Exposure is still a little strong. Let's see, maybe there. I like that. So then I'll copy that edit. I'll paste it. Oh, I don't want to. I like that. Straighten it out just a bit more. There we go, we'll paste that there. I like that better. It's a little dark, so I want to bump up the shadows. Not too much, so it doesn't take out of their facial contrast. Yeah, I like that. Okay. And then I wanted to show you what I might do on some of these where there's some distractions in the background. So we were shooting this at Inniswood Metro Garden. It's a relatively popular photo location, and so there's, you know, sometimes people in the back, or there are other distractions like cones, construction equipment, little signs. And for me as a photographer, I'm looking at the photo, I'm trying to stay as true to life as possible, but I'm also wanting to remove any distractions that might otherwise disrupt the flow of your eye throughout the photo, because we're trying to draw attention to the subject, and we're trying to draw attention to the feel of the photo and the feel of the moment when it was taken. And so if there's any little distractions, like actually a good example would be back here at the beginning of this scene. So it's this photo right here. If you look at the before, you'll notice this right here. It's not bad, but it's when you look back at the photo and you kind of take perspective, the white kind of stands out, that sign, and it's just sort of like a hose or something in the background. I'll usually take something like that out so that it just declutters the frame a little bit more. I'm not going to go in and remove like an excessive amount of things unless the photo requires it, like it's a bunch of, there's construction or something in the background, but I'm not going to go in and remove like a lot so that it becomes unreal. But some of those little distractions like that, they just help the photo to flow a little bit better. You'll notice here I did the same thing here. I removed this box right here and this hose again from the photo, trying to keep it all the same. Just declutters the frame a little bit, draws your eye right into the subject a little bit more. I'll use generative fill. Sometimes I will just use the remove tool if it's something a little bit different. Let's see. Coffee break. Okay, now I'll show you. Okay, so for example, I was going through this scene and we were, for this engagement session, we were waiting kind of hoping and praying that the rain would hold off, and it like downpoured for just a crazy amount of time right before the session, and then the sun came out and it was glowy and beautiful and everything was vibrant and it was wonderful. But it thunderstormed at the end of their session, so as the session progressed, again it was getting darker and darker, but I knew that my couple here, they really wanted the glowy, warm golden hour photo look. So you can see that this photo already inherently has some of this glowy light back here, you can see, but I wanted to enhance that a little bit. Nothing too crazy, you can see it still looks obviously natural, but I wanted to just go ahead and enhance that a little bit. So what I did was I took a mask and I'll do a linear gradient. I'll draw that across here, and then I'll bump up the exposure a slight bit. I'll bump up the temperature. Occasionally I'll bump up the saturation, not typically. I'll also decrease the texture, the clarity, and the dehaze, and then that's pretty much it. And that creates this sort of glowy effect. It enhances kind of that light flare look that you'll get in, you know, when the sun is shining or the sun is backlighting my subject here. So I copied that mask across these photos here, and I love how it turned out. I think it really helped to just create a little bit more of a texture and interest to the image. So sweet. They're such a great couple. Let's see. Okay, so I've done most of these already. Let's see. Throughout a session, I'll typically just basically approach it where I will go in with sort of a vision for what kind of photos, based on the location, based on the time of day, based on the couple, based on their interests and poses that maybe photos they've liked of themselves in the past. This couple was actually amazing. She sent me some of their favorite photos as a couple, and that really helped to inspire some of what they would feel most comfortable doing throughout the session. And basically, the approach was we walked through the gallery, we walked through this session, and we basically interact with the environment, they interact with each other, and I will pose and prompt them as we guide through. Basically having a fun time, relaxing and enjoying the time. That way those photos, you can see a genuine connection and not overly prompting and posing, but I'm still guiding throughout the entirety of the session so that you're always confident in what you need to be doing. So you can see we're headed over to the rock garden, and this beautiful light was just beaming straight across this grass, and I was like, pause, we have to get photos here. It was absolutely beautiful, and they're so sweet. They turned out so wonderfully, and I just love the way the light is hitting them in these photos. Just gorgeous. So I was enhancing some of that, playing around with crop. You can see this original photo is actually landscape, but I like it better this way. Love this. So this original photo is actually vertical. You can see I cropped in because I already had one of them. Vertical. I really loved the way the lighting was hitting them here in their hands, so I just cropped in on this. So here's an example of something I might do to declutter the background. If you can look at this photo, you'll notice that the brightest things in the image, the brightest whites, so they both have white on, but the brightest white is actually this sign over here. And so I want to detract from detract from the sign and bring the focus back to them. So I'm just going to remove with the spot removal tool right here, the spot that looks good. That looks good. And you can see it's nothing crazy, but it just helps to draw the attention back to them and focus on this beautiful light we have going on here. Love this, love the way the light turned out. Okay, and then this is actually the spot that they always love to take photos of here. As I work my way through the gallery, I will tab X for photos that I don't want as a part of the final gallery, and usually all of the rest are already flagged from my narrative calling software that I use. Already gone through these, so sweet. Let's see. It's a little warmer for my liking, so I'm actually going to bring that down a bit. There we go. Let's see. I'm going to dehaze this image just a little bit, just because it's pretty texture heavy. So I'm actually going to bring down the clarity and texture just a slight bit here. But what that does essentially is just sort of softens the image a little bit, brings the focus back to the actual motion of the subject. And because cameras are so powerful now, they capture every little detail. And so sometimes it can be almost too texture heavy, especially in a very textured background like this with all of those leaves. Love that. Okay. Those minor details often just really make all the difference. What makes a photo really stand apart. So sweet. I'm going to do the same thing here, bring down the texture. My black and white preset I already have dialed in, so that has dehaze, detexture, and declarify clarity already on there. Okay, let's see. So some of the things that I'll pay the most attention to is I'll just consistently check the original edit to make sure we're not getting too far from the original skin tones, especially the color of their hair. We don't want these things to be too different from the original gallery, so staying true to life while also having that beautiful color graded cohesive look that you get from a preset, which I've developed my presets to essentially be true to life while still having this color graded effect that creates a cohesive, beautiful, warm, bright, joyful, and natural. That dehaze just a bit. Bump up these shadows. There we go. Straighten the horizon. See, I just removed this distraction back there. And this little bush is sort of cut off in frame, so I'll take that in. All those little details, just cleaning up the photo, making sure the attention is on the subject where it should be, and then any other background just enhances. I'm going to do a little something different here. I'm going to bring up the highlights, focus on them, bring up their white clothing just to make it sort of almost glow in the image. There we go. Let's see. Actually, bring you over here. Match up the lines. There we go. You can tell I've already done editing with, but I'm just going back through here. One of the things that is really important to pay attention to is not just the composition of the imagery, but choosing the best images for your subject's expression. So one of the things that I think is so important as a photographer is developing an eye for finding your subject's best expressions in a photo. And you might think, oh well, it's kind of hard to do that because you don't know them, but you can really kind of tell, especially throughout a session, what looks most genuine and natural, what's most true to themselves. And so keeping an eye and a handle on that when you're going throughout the session will help you a lot when you're in your editing process. To sort of see, and also just the feel of the moment when you're taking the photo, whether your subjects felt awkward or uncomfortable, or whether they felt relaxed and joyful. And those are the photos that they're going to remember loving the most, and they're going to be the most excited about, and also they're going to feel the happiest with because they enjoyed having the photo taken. And then also they can look at the photo and they can say, oh, that's a genuine, true, like beautiful expression. I was really enjoying that moment, that kind of thing. So just something that I like to keep an eye on when I'm going throughout the session. The lighting was getting a little more difficult in this situation. Those blacks are a little heavy. Probably bring them up a slight bit. Okay, I like that one better. I'm gonna remove this here. Actually, I might like this one better. That's sweet. Let's see. The hardest part of going through a gallery is figuring out which photos you're going to give your clients so you're not absolutely overwhelming them in the process. Certain sessions, there's just so many wonderful photos, and so I'm never going to hold back an amazing photo, but again, you want the gallery to be strong, and a strong gallery has strong images, and so if you have like 3 similar photos in a row, that can detract actually from the strength of the photo, because it will have less power because there's so many options and your client will be going through so many, and we want them to be really excited about each image in the gallery. So just the culling process is not something to neglect. I used to really deliver like so many options of an image because I thought, oh well, the client will be happy if they can choose which one they like. But really, as a photographer, you learn to develop the ability to tell which photos your clients will like the most and which photos you can eliminate. Obviously, if there's like two incredible options, I'll usually keep those both in the gallery, but I don't feel the need to keep every last photo in the gallery, and that creates a stronger gallery presence. So sweet. Okay. And also just making sure my client gets a variety of landscape and horizontal photos is super important. Obviously, did I say landscape and horizontal? Landscape and vertical. Obviously vertical in the age of social media is very popular because they're easiest to share without cutting off the image, but there's something about a landscape photo that can tell a lot about a scene that you just don't get with vertical. So for printing, they're absolutely beautiful. We're using for other things, so I just want to make sure that my client gets a good mix, not just one or the other, but also not all landscape, because then you won't be able to share any, or because then you'll be sharing them, half the image will be cut off. So yeah. So I'm essentially just going into those images that I had edited earlier and just making sure that I like the edit, because a lot of times the first edit around I will be reasonably happy with but not finally happy with. So here on her ring, I'm just going to enhance that a bit. So I'm going to create a mask over her ring. Just going to bring up the contrast, bring down the shadows, blacks, up the highlights and whites, texture and clarity just a bit, and sharpness just a bit, really just to make her ring pop, because that is the highlight of this photo here. Exposure just a touch. There we go. Well, I literally have no clue when that cut me off, but essentially, I hope this gave you a little bit of an insight into my process, how I might approach a session, how I might approach editing your gallery, essentially the things that I think through, staying the most true to life while also remaining consistent. I hope it gave you some unique insights into how it might be to have a session with me, and then also what you might get in your final gallery, how I would go through editing those photos. Basically, I'm cautious to make sure that you feel like your most beautiful self in these photos without manipulating any variables or editing way too heavy, because I think natural is honestly the most beautiful in the end. But I still love, the editing process and cultivating beautiful, clutter-free, artistic images that you can truly just cherish and look back on and feel like you had a wonderful time, not only taking the photos, but looking through them for years to come. So with that, I'm going to get back to editing the rest of this gallery, and cheers! It's always ice cold by the end.